Namaste. All right, welcome. So today, for the first time in quite a while, I went into what is the Nirvikalpa Samadhi. And those of you who know the difference between the Savikapal and the Nirvikalpa. Nirvikalpa Samadhi is the absolute. And the nature of the merger with the absolute, it's been quite some time because I have been so in the manifestation that it hasn't had the permission to come in and take over like it usually does. So today, for about 4 hours, I was with Nirvikalpa. Now, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, it's usually very difficult to stay awake in, but I stayed awake in it. And so there was something really very fundamentally different that came. And so I'll share it because I do believe that until someone has come to that relationship with the absolute, their manifestation will not be for the world. There's a verse I read today in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, which has always been something of a mystery to me, but it became clear today. And when it came clear, the Samadhi came in. So there was a relationship with what I'm saying. And these are 3 verses in chapter 9, verse 342 to 344. Part of my practice is to read the Gita every day. But what I notice is I really light up when I start reading after the 6th chapter. So the 7th chapter, but especially the 9th and on, is really where the Gita is alive for me. And it's constantly revealing nature of the various stages that most of us on the spiritual path aren't able to recognize or be able to integrate into our lives, because you can't integrate something that you are. It takes something, the next stage, before you have a perspective on what it is that's come to you, that you can begin to integrate it. And this is the nature of all stages of the journey, is you're the last one to know where you are. You'll know where you've been, and you'll know that where this is a different version than where you've been, but you won't know what yet you are. It takes, you have to have moved to the next stage before the deepening into what it is you've already come to can happen. It's the nature of consciousness. Therefore, until you get to a certain momentum on the spiritual journey, you actually can't know if you started the spiritual journey, because there's no reference point until you've made it to the next stage. And then there is this deepening of the recognition of what you're becoming that then becomes a great aid on the spiritual journey, where before it's total faith or total a longing or an aspiration that arises from a different source than you that lets you know there's more. But interimly, until you come to each stage, you can't know the subsequent previous stages that you've gone through. So in these last chapters of the Gita, it's pointing to not so much the attainment, but the integration of the attainment in the quality of what we are as consciousness. everything is in the first chapters is reflected in the next chapters, and many of the things you've read in the previous 6 chapters you'll find in the later chapters. Dejection and discrimination and more effective yogic action and knowledge is each is a deepening and an enriching, and what deepens and enriching is the lived aspect of the realization, where it becomes part of your life. Like the remembrance stays more and more fully the more you become conscious of what it is you've already realized or what has already come to you. And so it's true in the entire journey. So in this particular chapter, there was one verse that would keep tricking me up. I said, well, why can't I get this? What is it that I'm not getting about these 3 verses? And here it's called The Yoga of Royal Knowledge and Royal Secret, 9th chapter. So this is direct revelation. 9th chapter it's an immediacy of knowing. It's direct knowing. It's not anything you think. It's the entire body, the entire system knows the truth of what it's encountering at this stage. And that's why it says people who do not have faith in this particular knowledge are unable to attain me and are born again in the cycles of birth and death. That means if you can't trust your own direct experience, well, then you can't trust anything. You don't have anything to rely on. So therefore, even when the universe starts revealing itself at this next stage, if you're not able to believe it, to recognize it, rather than dismiss it or make it unimportant, then it won't be able to manifest. It won't be able to grow in you. It takes a collaboration between the conscious ego, the awakened consciousness, with this unfolding and the different planes of consciousness within yourself, that it becomes real for you. So therefore, it's not, and I'm when you talk about your own awakening, and it's not confusing, or it's not even like last session about being able to articulate it. It is the fact that until you've been able to live it, it is not real. It's something that comes and goes. But when it becomes lived, it's something that comes and grows. And what makes it lived is actually us being able to honor what we already have experienced, what we already know, instead of letting our old ego distract us from it. So when you get to this verse, what Krishna is doing is he's revealing something of his nature. That's the nature of these chapters, is where it really isn't speaking a teaching to Arjuna. He's rather revealing himself. And that is the opportunity for Arjuna to directly experience. So in these verses, Krishna's bearing his soul. He's sharing something of what it is like for him to be him. And this is, you could say, instructing the very being of Arjuna in how and what his own nature is, without Arjuna even knowing how that's happening. So this is the introduction of the Supreme to the striving soul, who is now ready to come into this 3rd stage of the journey, coming out of its individuality and meeting its universal nature, be it the middle kingdom or be it the absolute. At this point, actually, it's already happened. You've crossed the threshold of the Brahman, which is a principle. It's not a being. It's a principle of consciousness, unbounded, which pervades everything. It carries the intelligence. It's not the intelligence itself. There's a very fundamental difference between the Supreme Being and the Brahman. The Brahman is the principle of the radiance of the Supreme Being, but the Supreme Being is the intelligence that has everything be as it is. It is this unspeakable, multi-dimensional, multi-layered, purposeful intelligence that when you are awake enough, you can actually perceive and experience as this unspeakable wonder. So when I read the verses of the Gita, I take it seriously. I take it seriously because I know it's a descriptor of something that is true. I trust or have faith that the Gita is the doorway for me. I've made it a doorway. I've empowered it to be a doorway, to keep entering into a way of perceiving or a way of looking beyond what perhaps is available to me on a regular basis. That's why the remembrance of the Gita is so important, or the remembrance of the Mother Book is so important. Is because we have to make it a lived part of our lives, and we are the ones who empower me or any teacher or any teaching. You are the ones that empower the effectiveness of any of these scriptures. That will always be a continuous revelation of the truth of things. And the part of you that can recognize that, if you don't listen to it, then you're not going to be able to traverse the whole journey. And if you do listen to it, that listening, that capacity to receive that direct knowledge will expand and expand until you will become what it is that's revealing itself. So today, one more piece of the Gita became available. I've been doing this for years and years and years and years. So this endless unfolding of the unspeakable wonders of what it means to be a conscious being in existence is always unfolding. Verse 342. This whole universe is pervaded by my unmanifest being. All beings abide in me, but I am not in them. Okay, so that's understandable. There is that in which all of us are rising. In the 12th chapter of the Gita, Arjuna saw that the entire universe was in the body of Krishna. So it's not inconsistent. And then he says, behold again my divine mystery, which is what he just revealed. These beings do not abide in me. Sustaining beings and not dwelling in them is myself that causes being to be. It's like a direct contradiction. It's exactly the opposite in the second verse. And I said, how come over the thousands of years since this was revealed, this error wasn't corrected? I remember having an argument with my teacher, with 3 other devotees, about this verse, saying, this can't be right. And he just listening to us and listening to us and listening to us. And eventually said, okay, I'll change it. And then he didn't change it. He was just recognizing that we weren't going to be able to get it. So it wasn't a mistake. It's apparent contradiction. And this apparent contradiction is a constant companion on the spiritual path, and any enlightened being will at any one moment be an apparent contradiction. Why? Because the duality starts merging. The separates of enlightened and unenlightened, embodied and spirit, matter and spirit. These boundaries start becoming more one thing. So therefore, one of the natures of the realized being is it could be contradictory, and the person has no problem with it. So you have a problem with that? What's the problem? Oh, I see. You see it that way and that way, rather than that way and this way. So that's the nature of the paradox of coming into recognition of the things that we've taken for granted as we enter into this ultimate oneness and purposeful intelligence. They do not abide in me, yet sustaining beings and not dwelling in them is myself that causes beings to be. Okay, so it seems to be saying something else. They can be within me. They can be within me or not within me. All beings abide in me, but I am not in them. Or they do not abide in me, but I sustain them anyway. Right? I mean, can you get your head around that? Yeah, I can get my head around that. It seemed to me that it's got to be, why say it this way? Why not say it different? Then he says, not dwelling in them is myself that causes them to be. Now, I could get that. I could get that the only reason we can be separate beings is because the Supreme Being is not at that moment dwelling in us. So, yeah, I can recognize that I exist because the Supreme Being and I aren't one. Because if I were one with the Supreme Being, I wouldn't exist. I wouldn't know myself as a separate being. I wouldn't be aware of the story of me and the misery of me and the conditions of me and how bad my meditations are or how great my meditations are or how well all that would be gone. There would be no question, no struggle, no effort. Yet at the same time, we swim in this ocean, this Brahmanic ocean, of that sustains even our separateness. So it does seem to suggest that the Supreme Being has delegated something to the Brahmanic field in this conversation that is sustaining all these beings that don't abide in me, even though I'm not abiding in them. And then, like the vast wind, always remaining in space, although blowing everywhere, so also do all beings ever abide in me. So, son of a bitch, once you think you got one figured out, it throws you right back into the previous one. Okay. So I got it. Now I'm going to see if I can communicate what it is that I got. See if it translates. I'm going to explore. Maybe it'll be just as confusing. In the Bhagavad Gita, later it says, when it describes in 15th chapter the nature of the Supreme Being, it talks about this gradation of its manifestation. And it uses the word Purusha for being. Purusha means being, by the way, individualized sense of self. And being is individualized. Jivatman is an expression of that individualization. So in this earthly plane, I manifest myself as two Purushas, the perishable and the imperishable. These are perishable, but the unchanging soul is called the imperishable. Okay, now I had brought the question into the room a number of times about what are you before you were born and what are you after you die, and therefore also what are you now? Well, that is describing the manifest and the unmanifest, the perishable and the imperishable. So when we're in here between death and birth, we're manifest. We're the manifest. A part of the true part of us is the Purusha. The whatness is manifest in a physical world. And when it's before it's born or after it's born, it's unmanifest. There's still a Purusha. And I've traveled these dimensions. I know that beings exist after bodies are dropped. And they exist before they take bodies, and they exist after they take bodies. It's irrefutable evidence, constantly encountering many different variations of beings that are associated with Earth and beings that aren't associated with Earth, and beings that are topical, they're primal, they're unchanging principles that are holding together the structure. So yeah, no doubt about it. There is content in this manifestation of the unmanifest, the imperishable Purushas. It is still duality, it's still creations. It's just the parts of creation that we don't have access when we're so utterly identified in our perishable identity. The one that is being sustained, either being in the Supreme Being or not being in the Supreme Being. So, and then he says, the Supreme Being is other than these two, who as the Supreme Self is the immutable, all-pervading Lord and upholds and maintains all worlds, all dimensions, all gods, all beings, all creations, perishable or imperishable. And since I am beyond the perishable and higher than the imperishable, I am known in this world and the Vedas as the Supreme Being. And then he concludes, after being freed from delusion, when one knows me as the Supreme Being, which means one who knows themselves as the Supreme Being, he worships me in all respects with his whole being. That means his entire life is utterly devoted to the purpose of the unfolding opportunity of existence. That's what it means. That's the devotion. Endless work activity only for the purpose, for the continued unfolding of the possibility that lied latent in that inherent absolute truth. Okay, so who's speaking in the Gita? The Supreme Being. The words are coming from that perspective. The Supreme Being is the intelligent, actualizing principle of the Absolute. The Supreme Being is that which stands between the unspeakable thought, the unknowable, that which is prior to existence, carrying the inherent potentiality that wills to be through the Supreme Being, and from the Supreme Being to all the gods, to all the imperishable entities, to the entire opportunities of creation. This is not an abstraction. This is actually what we are. So you can understand that the spiritual path isn't just about being able to have good meditations. But it's also got clear to me in reading this is that the nature of the Supreme Being is that he has to remain separate from the creation in one sense in order for the creation to individualize. Otherwise, it'll just be one. It won't come out of the unspeakable and become speakable. It won't come out of the profound stillness and silence from which even the Supreme Being emerges. It has to become separate to exist. And in that separateness, that means not just us human beings or any beings that may live consciously in the physical dimension, but all the layers and multiple dimensions of beings that support the particular unfolding of this dimension. So by his very existence, this exists. This is so. But he himself is not engaged in the sustaining of that entire process. It is a different principle, Prakriti, the Mahamaya, or the Maha Prakriti. She is the one who incubates and holds what the Supreme is expressing into existence, so that it may grow, may develop and nurture, and then be produced in innumerable forms, innumerable dimensions. She's the creatrix. She's the Divine Mother principle. She's the one that rules all these dimensions, including this one that I'm speaking into. And without her permission, this could never have been spoken. Yet without the Supreme Being, nothing would exist. There would be no Prakriti. There would be no perishable or imperishable Purusha. There would be no you, no earth, no solar system, no galaxy, no universe. Without that intelligent actualizing principle of the Absolute, none of this would be true. So he's pointing in the 9th chapter to true intelligent structural principles that can actually be understood by the human mind, where we, in order to understand it, have to have a different quality of consciousness than what mind allots to us ourselves. We have to wake up to the truth of our knowingness, our ability to know directly. And then our mind can be the means of translating that into discernible language, understanding. What does that mean? How can I affect change in my life or change in my world? Then the mind becomes the servant of the intelligence of the awakened consciousness, rather than the mind determining what it can accept or can't accept. So when I went into the state, I recognized that the Supreme Being was coming in, and it was coming in because I unwittingly was allowing it. I now could find the part of me that was allowing it. In order to show to me once again, and perhaps in a new way, what it is that had happened to me, so that I can become more responsible and more in presence with that, what that means, what that is. And in that process, I dwelled on that boundary between the Supreme Being and the Absolute. in the samadhis that I started experiencing in 2004, where I would lose myself and the days would fly by and I wouldn't know anything had changed and my body wouldn't change and nothing had changed, I was merged in the absolute. There was no knowing of it. There was coming back and trying to find the ego again, trying to find the mind again, trying to find the person again. But in this case, there was this ability to rest on the boundary between that which is, I was trying to share it with such my so profoundly fulfilling that nothing else needs to exist. Just resting there. I mean, and then when I came out, I was coming out, I became aware of how I have so fully come into existence. I have so become a person. I am enjoyment. I get pleasure out of coffee. I get pleasure out of talking to you. The things that give me satisfaction are of a complete different order than before, but I can enjoy all of it. I had 2 meetings today with Karen and Arjuna. And as I'm interacting with them, I know why I'm in existence. I know that even one who touches the absolute, even one who knows the Supreme Being, if there is still some role for them to play, then the world will bring them this profound relationship to existence. Whole-bodied, full, in the midst of this creation that the Supreme Being is sustaining. I am in that creation as an individual, enjoying what it means to be individualized. And how it's taken me years and years and years to be able to do that. But the only reason I'm doing that is for love, is for the delight that comes with being a separate conscious entity in relationship with existence, but especially in relationship to the Supreme Being that each of you are. So this goes right back to Ramakrishna, where he was saying, I would much rather much rather taste sugar than be sugar. But he hadn't yet learned how to dwell in the absolute. Being able to dwell in that and to be eternally there, I know that's where I'm going to go. No matter how sweet and how profoundly fulfilling it is when I'm here, nothing could compare to that. Nothing. And I remembered the last period of time I was in India, the last 3 years of India, I had a taste of this. It hadn't yet come as samadhi because this was pre-2004. But like 2001, well, it was 2002, 2003, and then part of 2004. All I wanted was the absolute. I now know what it was. I was looking at the caves that the sadhu sat in, and I said, hey, I could live here. I would just drink the water when it collected in the pool of the rock that was right, the hole in the rock that would gather. I would only eat when there was some necessity. I would just stay with this. I wouldn't move till the body needed to move. And it was like all I would dream of, it's all I longed for when I would walk each day, was to get in touch with that part of me that just wanted to dwell eternally in that absolute principle that was showing itself. It was probably the preparatory for the samadhis to come. That principle of what Arunachala represented. The principle of the unchanging eternal mountain, which we're always circumventing, but very few actually enter into. I would read the story of Maharishi, Ramana Maharishi, where at 16 decided to die. And why did he die? Because he got a taste of that absolute. He got a taste through that unmanifest aspect of himself that exists before his birth and that is there after his death. And that became the path where no matter where he was, that was an opportunity to stay with the absolute. And for him, Arunachala was the symbol. Arunachala was the remembrance. He lived in the atmosphere of Arunachala. He lived where every day he saw this mountain, a physical demonstration of that absolute that he was dwelling in, so that even when insects started eating him as he sat in these damp holes in the ground or sides of the road, he let them feast. When they fall off, he'd put them back on. Go ahead, eat. Go ahead, eat. I'm not this body. And the more he gave permission to not exist, the more he could be in touch with that which eternally exists. That was my fantasy. That's like what I lived for. That was the organizing principle. And then the teacher said, okay, this guy's in risk. I'm going to lose him. I'm going to have to put him to work. And what happened when he had me open the center in Sacramento, is when I would come out of the samadhi, what brought me out of the samadhi, I recognized, was the cry of the dejected soul. It was the cry of the embodied supreme being that could not know its own nature, in anguish in its separation from its original nature. And that was a tangible feeling. And that was what brought the responsibility to come out of the samadhi, even when they would go on and want to go on and on and on, was that my teacher gave me an opportunity to be in relationship to the rest of existence, so that simultaneously I could know of the purpose of my awakening, the purpose of existence, and to be aligning with the intelligence in which the Bhagavad Gita is a demonstration of the organizing principle that allows the possibility of the unfolding of the opportunity of mankind. I know it's a play. I know it's only an apparent winning and losing. It's only an apparent separation. It's only for a period of time that we suffer in the separative consciousness. Thereby, it does not within itself serve anything greater than itself. But that self is everything. There's nothing else that exists that's more worthy to serve than the unfolding opportunity of existence. So as a human being, we can become aligned with a purpose so much greater than what we could imagine as a human being, the more and more we awaken to the truth of what we are. To imagine life isn't purposeful, to imagine that you don't matter, to imagine that you don't change, is a fundamental error of a diminished quality of consciousness that you are. And it is causing you suffering. It is causing you anguish, which you become more aware of when that diminished consciousness becomes a bit more awake. The more awake you become, the more totally you can see your predicament and in others. And the more you carry with you the cost of ignorance as a price of suffering, as an experience of suffering. And that memory, that archetypal memory, doesn't leave you, even when as long as you're in the body, and you're merging with these extraordinary states of being. So what sustains existence? How does the Supreme sustain existence? Through this purpose. The more we can become aware of the purpose living us, the more we can live our lives purposely, the more we are unwittingly, even in our embodiment, serving the unfolding of existence and thereby serving the Supreme Being itself within us. So I recognize that this realization and the consciousness and the articulation that over the years I've been able to bring is showing you a path that's not ordinarily articulated. It's not ordinarily defined. It's coming, something that's coming from one of you that has been awakened and has succeeded in traversing the journey to bring it back so that you, this Western world, this domain, this period of consciousness that's really on a threshold of breaking all boundaries of previous limitations of right and wrong and of the unknown, has actually come out of ignorance into this illumined quality of being that's actually creating things that have never been possible in the physical dimension until humanity came forward. It is for you because there is this inevitable expression of this possibility coming. Sri Aurobindo saw it, Meher Baba saw it, Mother Panacharya saw it, my teacher saw it, and every person who strived for the greater good was in touch with that, if they know it or not, as to bring about a new order. I was watching the movie Lincoln by Steven Spielberg, and I watched the just painful description of the price that he had to pay to end slavery. And the unfolding of the sacrifice, because on a personal level, his life was pretty screwed up. His wife was a shrew that was maniacally trying to get relief, leaning on him and accusing him, very intelligent. It's like constantly testing his resolve, constantly adding an additional burden to the burden that he was already standing up to. And yet he took all the necessary actions with tremendous vigor, despite almost overwhelming odds, in order to make sure slavery ended. That was his commitment, because it was wrong. Because it was wrong. Not only is it wrong, it was wrong by the Constitution of the United States, which was the first piece of truth that mankind has been able to come up with that's aligned with what the real opportunity of life is. Not to be dominated and be kept in a box so we can feel secure and safe, but that we can choose to come into existence and create a more full and true relationship with existence. It's only ignorance that would long for that, the one that would want to return to the womb, to some sort of previous imagined happier existence. But when you're awake, you know there is a manifesting purpose. And once you touch into that particular bliss, you cannot go back to sleep and rest comfortably. So there is this profound interface between human life and spiritual life, between the purpose of human beings and the purpose of existence, of spirit. And that we're the dynamic expressions of that coming into existence. And we can empower ourselves to do so by knowing the truth of what we are, knowing the truth also of who we are that we still believe is truth, of the error of ignorance, which still believes that ignorance is true. I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I'm afraid. I don't know how to be in life. I'm clinging to what I know because I don't know if I can survive without these things. This longing to be secure, to be in control, to be safe, to have it my way. If I don't have these things, I would die. I'd cease to exist. All these are expressions of the ignorance that is so convincingly real when you're caught into that quality of consciousness. So the waking up out of that is the most important thing, to begin to see it within yourself and to withdraw the authority you've unwittingly, unconsciously, or consciously given to it. This is the journey. This is the struggle. This is the purpose of each emerging awakened soul on the planet. So I know that still these revelations, it's the same as the 9th chapter of Gita. Krishna didn't expect Arjuna to understand this. Krishna didn't expect Arjuna to be able to convert this into something he can live. This is a revelation. This is just something you let in. You let in because your being knows it's true. And in time, this changes the amplitude of your consciousness. In time, this makes the pain of your separation not comfortable, but uncomfortable. In time, this takes you out of the sandbox of whatever adaptation, successful or unsuccessful, you come to in your life and makes it unbearable. Because it has within it a knowing of something greater, which makes this not acceptable. So there's nothing to do but to receive this. So there are people on Crowdcast, many of whom maybe I don't know, who are just wondering, who the hell is this Satri? And even they are getting this at the levels of truth of what they are. I mean, I don't even have to have faith in it, because I know that begrudgingly, if they like it or not, it'll show up again for them. Damn it. I thought I was going to get happiness in this relationship I currently have, and it's all gone to shit. Or this little piece of security I found myself and it burned down or blew away or got flooded. Damn him. You have to be in a certain relationship with the Supreme Being to hear the words of the Supreme Being, to receive it. You have to have some access to that principle within yourself to be inspired or lifted or touched by it. You already are, in truth, but normally there's a lot of shit in the way. And that it's an endless unfolding because of the inherent imperfection of physicality, of matter, of bodies, of human condition. It's not something you're going to get out of. It's something you learn the right relationship with. It's learning to find the right relationship with existence, because when you do, every day becomes an opportunity to come more deeply and truly and profoundly in relationship with existence. All right. So there's no need to go any further or say anything more, but I'm going to just sort of put aside that one piece and open it up to you here in the room and to whatever they may be there for you. It could be related to what I just said. It doesn't make any difference. All right, Anne. Been a while. Welcome home.
Same to you.
Yeah.
It's so nice to be back here with you both.
And we leave tomorrow. I abide in them. They abide in me.
Just for a few days.
And they don't abide in me. Just give me a couple of days.
I always feel like I have a log jam in my throat and I never quite know what's going to come out or how. But I would like to share with you what the last 3 months have been like.
Okay. You don't have, if you can do it in a reasonable period of time, yes.
I can. For the first year I was here, I experienced a lot of sattva. And while I was in that year, I was like feeling left out, that I wasn't doing deep, awful work. Now I am.
So what?
And now I'm saying I'm doing it wrong. This isn't the way it's supposed to be. So.
And when you're doing it right, you're doing it wrong. These are the contradictions.
Exactly. Exactly. If I'm in sattva, I should be in pain, and if I'm in pain, I should be in sattva.
Right.
But the bodily experience of this now is extreme density and tiredness, and my body feels like lead. I can hardly pick up my feet. I can't exercise. I can hardly walk. Sometimes I feel my feet feel like they're 90 years old. And another thing that's happening is that through most of the meditations and the groups we did in the barn while you were gone, I could not keep my eyes open. And I have just enough energy to do what I have to do. And that's been a lot of work. I've been working on reports, and that's been essential. I have to do that. And not much else. I don't have the energy to do much else. And so I'm just wondering if that seems right.
Well, the only part that's not right is that you have to do reports. Everything else is perfect.
The density and the tiredness but how do I not have to do reports?
Yeah. Yes. How do you
You've been saying
not
this
have
to
to
me.
do reports?
You've been saying this to me for years. I know, but how do I live if I don't work? You keep saying that. I don't know how to.
It really is the. There's a certain like rule-based orientation that the human ego brings into life that says, I have to do this. And that definition of something in the outer life where you give it that type of reality is driving a stake in the possibility of the unfolding of your spiritual self. Because there's an investment, there's fear, there's control, there's a story about what if I didn't. There is this distrust of existence such that this becomes my way of surviving because I can't trust existence. It defines so much of the existence in that necessity. It's perfectly fine to do necessity, but without feeding the reality. The necessity is to feed the body. The necessity is to get enough rest, to drink enough, to eat enough, to get enough exercise. Those are necessities. Everything else you're creating, you're making it into a necessity. So the problem isn't that you have work to do. The problem is the way you're organized around that necessity. So what you have to explore, and this is what I invite you to do now that you're back for a bit, is in your meditation, take that necessity of doing the reports and imagine you didn't do it. And what would happen in your life? How long before they would start yelling at you? How long before they'll say, well, we're going to withhold your payments? How long? And then notice what would happen in the unfolding of your life if you didn't do that necessity, and then meet those things in your body. Meet, what would that mean? Begin to say, okay, well, what would I do then? Create a world other than the one defined by necessity, by meeting what it is if you didn't do the necessity, and watch what unfolds. This is self-afflicted bondage. Using all the organization of yourself as a person to come into the world successfully, all the rules your mother told you or you felt you had to, or the things you took on about your worthiness to go to heaven or to not go to hell, or whatever be the paradigm, are all now consolidated into this one thing that you have not yet resolved, which is exhausting your ability to be with the opportunity that you have before you here. So it's a journey we all travel ourselves. Someone can tell us, someone can advise us, someone gives us instructions. But we're the ones who apply the effort. We're the ones who don't take the action or take the actions. That begins to dismantle this very convincing reality that we recreated from our ignorant, less awake conditions of consciousness. and to begin to open up through that process the opportunity of existence for you that you've not yet allowed. Now, it could be as simple as an idea of being a bag lady living on the sidewalk, left alone, you know, when the cold weather comes and no door is open for you and you're just going to have to spend the night freezing. It could be simple as any of these other fear-based ideas or principles we took on or believed without examining the assumptions behind them with our intelligence.
Well, I know what those are and what they've been. I just don't know how to not complete the work projects I've taken on. I really don't. I mean, I can be with the imagining what would happen if I didn't do the reports, but I can't imagine not doing them. You know, I don't. Well, I can't tease apart what you're.
Yeah. All right. So I think the nature of what you have to look at then is the opportunity is to recognize how this design of your life is not serving you. And then what can you do to minimize its dominance over your life and your future? And then take actions accordingly. And how do you take actions? You tell people. You also then look at the things that if you really didn't do this work anymore, what would your life be?
Broke.
Sounds like a good start. The idea of being into existence from that, okay, that's worst case scenario. That's called low expectations, right? From there, you can't know based on the ego paradigm what's possible because you've run your life through control only. You've not let the universe step in when there was a true necessity. If you are truly broke, the universe comes in and takes over. And then you get to be in gratitude and wonder. The idea of you doing it yourself is a Western educated malady, sickness. I have to do this myself. It serves for the development of an individual to a certain point, but it ultimately, it gets in the way of our universal nature, our divine nature at some point. And we have to learn how to let it happen so the universe can show itself. Now, I have been blessed with periods of great poverty, but I was never felt I was in poverty. I felt I was in a venture. I didn't take it as a scarcity. I took it as well, this is how it is. I have no food. I have no transportation. I do not have enough clothes. It's raining and I have no protection from the weather. This exposure to life broke, as you were using the word, allowed me to discover I still exist. All right, well, I'm a little hungry. I'm a little thirsty. I'm a little wet. I'm a little cold. So what? What was allowed me to do that is this purpose for something greater. It's like the university professor, or the university president, who was sitting on the side of the road, dressed with just a white dhoti, catching me and having me talk to him while he explained, hey, I just left my family, my wife, my children. I've closed all my affairs. All I have are these clothes and this bowl and whatever divine wills for me. And I live for that. That's how I choose to spend the rest of my life. Let the universe support me. And everything needed comes. Because when the true necessity there is no more fear or projection or programming. There is just this stripped down vulnerability. And we open to life, to the future, to the unfolding. Because it doesn't end well anyway. No one gets out alive. You're not going to come out of this one alive. You are not going to survive this one. So you might want to discover the principle of what it means to be alive and still be vulnerable. Because once you pass, there's nothing you can die. Now, you may carry the remnants of the story, but There, you can't die there. You can't starve there. You can't burn there. You can't. None of that can only happen in your imaginations. Here, it can actually happen. This is the opportunity to come into existence wholeheartedly. Allow whatever happens to be exactly what divine is showing you at this moment for you to meet. And all you have to do is be where you are, and it will show itself. Now, I can speak those words, but you actually have to discover this for yourself. You have to discover that the universe loves you much more than you could possibly love yourself. You have to discover that you're an expression of a purpose much larger than yourself that's trying to manifest as you. You have to let go of the old paradigms and structures that defined what was real and not real, what you needed, what you didn't need in order to get by, before the universe can actually let you see that it's been sustaining you all along. It may not have been inviting in you, but it's been sustaining you all along.
Well, let me just ask you then. So in 2017, I didn't make enough money to make it through the year.
Mhm.
And in 2018, now this past year, all the work that came was not the universe supporting me. Yes, it was.
Oh, well, I mean, in one sense it was. You got a good job, although it requires a lot of work.
A bunch of contracts.
Yes, but the other side of it is it's something you created as a momentum of previous creations that you've brought into existence. So this seemed to be the only way in which you could make money. And the idea of not having enough is the problem of your consciousness.
That's a big driver for me. It's a
not
survival
having
fear.
enough. And that, until that is met, there will always not be enough.
And I meet that by not having enough. I mean, I can do that.
Yeah. And there's, you can be intelligent, practical. I mean, you got a contract, you're just finishing out the contract, writing the reports, right?
Yes.
It's going to have a limited time period.
Yes.
So when you're done finishing contracts, then you're going to be thrown into, oh my God, what's next? Oh my God.
No, I won't. I'll be thrown into North Carolina and India, which is like, praise the Lord, but I wouldn't be able to do either of those if I hadn't worked all year and made the money
maybe
for it.
not. You don't know.
Well, you're right. I don't know.
You don't know. And it's a useful attitude to take. Because the willfulness that we bring, the pride, the self-respect, the idea of ourselves as being effective in the world, and fuck them, I can do it myself. I don't need anybody. I don't need any relationship. I don't need my mom. Gives us ability as human beings to not be dominated by the things that dominated us before. But they dominate ourselves this way in our effort not to be dominated, to be able to have control, apparent control. It'll all fall away if you like it or not. Learning to live life without those compensating structures is part of the art of this path, is coming into a right relationship, because you can't see it from the paradigm that still says it's not enough. Now, you've created a thing where it's North Carolina and India, but that's placators if this structure is not met. Because when you come back from India, then the whole thing will come right back again, no matter what state you come to.
Yeah. And I'm not motivated by all those things you just said. I work to live, but I work also to have. And the having is here.
Having what?
That here.
This
Washoe
place.
Valley and
your connection that you can get to when you're living in this purposeful environment.
Yeah.
Who gets that? You get that. We don't give it to you. You get it. You draw the nurturance from it in a felt experience that is yours. Not me, not Washoe Valley, not this community. You have greater access to it when you're here, but that's like the Dumbo feather. You're flying, and you think you're flying because you got the feather. Then you have to relinquish the feather ultimately to realize you're flying. I don't need anybody to fly. I am that. And then you can choose to be here in a whole different way than before. I need to be here. Because that's just another transference.
And it's not even that. So anyway, I don't want to take too much time on
No, it's good. We're getting through a lot of material. Very relevant.
Yeah, I don't need to be here. I get that I don't need to be here. I want to be here.
Good.
And I work to stay.
Okay. So, I mean, and then that part's
Yeah.
aligned.
Yeah.
Okay. So the only thing that is not aligned is right now in this moment, universe wants something to happen in your system that cannot happen because you've made this the necessity.
Because I'm working on reports.
Yep. And so therefore the next thing is already hanging on the door and you're ignoring it. And
It's
your
the
body-
last report is what's banging on the door.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
there it is.
the last report.
pin, because what it
Yeah.
knows, the ego
Yeah.
knows that when that's done, you're done. It's done. And then you're free.
And then, so the next time someone calls and says, "Are you available?" I say no.
Yeah. What would you do? You have to say, look into your own experience. Because the bottom line of it is having a work is not a problem. It's when we make the work the necessity, when we give it greater authority than the truth that has come to us and the actions that are aligned with that truth. You could be doing this work, and in the right consciousness, it could be joyful. It could be alive. It'll be great to get grounded, to get articulate. Oh, look at, I have a mind back again. Wow, how wonderful to have a mind. You know, so it can become not an obstacle at all, but a enriching of what it is that's coming to you. It's not a either or universe. It's this and that universe, in fact. So there you have it. That's really it. That's it for all of you. That's the recognition that life is actually, whatever it is that you currently find yourself at, is the thing to be met so that you can be with it in such a way that it no longer defines you as it defined you before. It no longer is the stake in the unfolding of the manifestation of the divinity with you that you've empowered unwittingly, or you're empowering because of what you're making it into a necessity. You're making a preference or a security or a possession into something it's not, because none of these things belong to you. Anything outside of you does not belong to you. You cannot have anything outside of you when you cross the threshold at the end of your life. You have to get used to none of this is yours, or coming to the state of consciousness, but all of this is yours, and it makes no difference if I have this piece or that piece. This is the nature of the unfolding of where you are, and it's no doubt about it. And this is, you are making a transition that will take you beyond the identity organization associated with yourself as a separate human being. You're the one who has to be willing. And I suggest that you don't make completing your reports the problem. Just complete your damn reports. And there will be a time in your day where you will have the ability to do it. Maybe it'll take a cup of coffee or something. But you'll have a time in your day someday, not when you're worrying about it, but some point in the day will be a natural time where you'll discover you'll have what you need to do, the consciousness you need to be in for it to flow perfectly. And where there is this sense of happiness and satisfaction for having completed one little more thing in your life. Rather than make a story about it being a that versus a this. And you're doing that.
Yeah, that's the way it feels.
Yeah,
It
and
feels like a burden. Yeah.
And it's more of a burden because it's a lesson long not yet fully learned. There is still a piece of this lesson that you still allowed to be in the stake of the heart of your being that you need to take out. It's not a stake. It's a twig. It's an irritant. It's nothing of any substance. Okay, that was good.
I'll listen to this
again
and again.
Good. I think
See if I can make sense of it.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Did anybody on Crowdcast with a question?
I'm going to open up, but we'll bring Eric up in the room.
As I'm working on, I'll try to be as concise as I can.
That was quick. That was a good start.
Yeah. Oh, okay, Satri, as I informed you, I've been on a Gita writing binge lately, and I'm noticing profound benefits really fast. So I highly recommend to anyone who's sincerely connected or interested in connecting with Satri and the opportunity here to take his encouragement to write the Gita, a chapter a day, more seriously. Because I'm noticing there's a lot more is going on every single nanosecond you're writing the Gita, and you don't even have to like what you're reading, understand what you're reading, or it's actually better if you kind of tune all that out and just write it, because there's a lot going on. But anyway, so you're leaving, and this is the only opportunity I have. So what I'm doing is I'm doing at least 3 chapters a day of the Gita, 10 max a day, usually average 4 to 6 chapters a day. And if I'm focusing on that primarily, but if I lose the taste for that, I switch to the mother book or your new book, the Bhagavad Gita Revealed. And you have given me mantras in private meetings, and I have one linked with each of these texts that I would like to recite, each one 4 times with each book in your hand. And should I do it out loud or internally?
Out loud.
All right.
This is a guy who knows why he's on the planet.
Yeah. No, seriously, like anyone sincerely connected to him or interested in connecting him, I would recommend all your free time, except if you're exercising or eating. Write the Gita and die to everything else and just do that. But anyway.
Okay. 4 times.
Hari Om Tat Sat Shri, Hari Om Tat Sat Shri, Hari Om Tat Sat Shri, Hari Om Tat Sat Shri. Om Anandamayi Chaitanyamayi Satyamayi Parame, Om Anandamayi Chaitanyamayi Satyamayi Parame, Om Anandamayi Chaitanyamayi Satyamayi Parame, Om Anandamayi Chaitanyamayi Satyamayi Parame. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, thank you, Satchi.
You're welcome.
Jai Baba.
Okay, we have someone on podcast.
Yeah, there is a question from Luke in the Netherlands, and he's written in, do we gain anything after self-realization?
Actually, if you get to self-realization, you've probably lost almost everything. So congratulations. So really the spiritual path is really about losing what you thought was true, because what you all are is already this. So as you go into the next stage of the journey, you start shedding the part of the universal collective consciousness that you're unwittingly carrying, and it too starts falling away. And in the process, what you gain is what's already there that was just obscured or hidden from your ability to know directly. And of course, the difference between the two is what I speak of always, because most of my work is about working with people who are stepping outside of the boundary of their individuality and opening up to this universal condition of being, which gets you in touch with the purpose of your birth. You get you in touch with the purpose of mankind and your relationship with that unfolding purpose. There you go, Luke. All right. Yes. Tara.
I always forget to do that. I'm going to remember this time. My question was when you asked, or you said that we should get in touch with who we are before we were manifest and before we were born and after we die. So what came was an image of me. And so
What was the image? I know what it is. Go ahead, say it.
you know what it is?
Yeah, I want to see if you know it.
Well, I know what I know what the image was, but well, if you already know, then that's fine. Okay, so
She just deprived you of the opportunity to know who.
well, no, I was gonna say I'm just but I don't want to sound.
Brag.
So I was sitting cross-legged on a kind of a throny thing.
Throw anything.
Yeah, and I felt and I was big. And
Not just fat.
no, big. Like I got the sense of bigness
Yeah.
and then spaciousness and
Vast.
yeah. And just I was just meditating. That's what
And what was your sense of it? What was your sense of that quality of yourself before you were born and after you die?
well, the spaciousness.
You know the spaciousness. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what I sensed when I
Okay.
saw the image.
All right. And then what does that say about what you are now? Could they be different?
Well, so that's
How else could it be otherwise?
yeah, I suppose that's true.
This would be a commercial break. In the truth of you, right? Human life would be the commercial break. Okay, so sitting in that image of yourself, just take a second. Sitting in that image of yourself that you can imagine. Your mind is allowing you to imagine it. It may not allow you to believe it, but it's allowing you to imagine it. What would it feel like? You said spacious.
I got a sense of that I was holding space for things to be.
And what was the feeling of holding space for things to be?
It was very sacred.
And what did that sacredness feel like?
Well, it felt very grounded.
Good.
It just felt complete, I guess.
Complete. Whole. Full. Could I use the word love?
Yes.
Sacred, love, spacious, big. Feel into that. Let that sink into your body. Can you let that be felt now, in between, in this moment? Rather than something that you should be embarrassed to be ashamed of, but be something that you would want to let everyone know. Look at what I discovered. Look at what I am. Let me take you in my embrace. Feel that. We are perfectly fine being ashamed and miserable and small, but it's very uncomfortable to be big and true and real.
Well, I came up because I was having trouble really. I didn't know what I should do with the image.
There you go. You got the answer. Be it. Wear it. Stay in that quality that's already there in you. And then anything that arises in that space, you'll know to be false. That's other than that. That makes you small, makes you doubt, makes you question, makes you rebellious, makes you the thing you became in between.
So when I feel small and all of that, I should
bring forward the image and take it on, wear it, be it. It is what you are. You're getting, I've always known this, right? And you know that I've wanted you to know this. And you've been, yeah, but not now. No, I can't do it yet. No, not me. How many years has it been?
No. Been a few. 2012. That's what I met you. That's what I counted back. I had
How many years?
whatever 2012 would be
2012. All right.
when you were in Portland. That's when I
That's
met
right.
you.
That's right.
Yeah.
The truth of what you are now deserves its time on the stage.
Okay, I don't know what that means, but
That's all right. It's perfectly good not to know what it means. Watch as it unfolds. Be in delight. All right, my dear.
Tuesday night, you asked why we're here. And I wanted to share why
Okay.
I'm here. My journey's been long. My journey's been a long one. I was looking for Bible study classes at the age of 10. And I looked into Christianity, and at 10, I said no. And I sat there on my bed and said no. And the next thing I felt was the presence of God. And from then on, it's been my journey to find the greatest truth that I could find. And I went through Christian churches, Alice Bailey studies, Maitreya, Buddhism, looking for the truth. And I had just left a Buddhist study because I saw that they were not living the principles that they were teaching. And I was in a void, 2015. And Larry Kaiser, Vasudeva, brought a flyer to me. And the flyer was about Satri coming to Nevada City. And he said, I think you'll enjoy this. And so I went. And I wish I could remember exactly what my thoughts were at that particular time. I know after, I also got a business card of yours. And I still have it. And I put it on my computer. And I said, I'm going to leave it here and see what happens. But I know right afterwards, I started listening to the Bhagavad Gita studies. And they were life-changing. I would listen to each one 2 and 3 times. And that was the truth that I had been seeking all of these years, decades. And I was facilitating another book study at the time, and I started speaking about Satri to those people, and they started asking me about it, and they were interested. The other aspect was I've always wanted to make a difference on the planet. That was just inherent. It was just really foremost in my mind. And I had tried to do parenting, and for decades it didn't work. It didn't work. I wanted to influence lots of people. I wanted to make a difference. And after about 5 months of listening to, I came to Washoe, and it was for 5 days. It was such an inspiring time being here. I was in Sydney, having conversations 24/7 with spiritual people. I had never experienced anything like that. It was just, I was filled. It just filled me. It just filled me so, so deeply. And so one of the friends in one of the other books wanted to study the Gita with me. And so we decided to do it. And it was just going to be the two of us. And then Satsang said, "Oh, let's tell the people in Nevada City." And so they told a few people, and that started the Gita group there. And after months and maybe years of doing that, when I see a person taking the truth that comes through your revelations and you're speaking and really changes their life and really lives from that place, that is the difference that I've wanted to make. And it wasn't the thousands of people, it wasn't the hundreds, but also, as you have said, and David Hawkins says, that one person knowing the truth of who they truly are is not counterbalancing one person who doesn't, but is much greater. And so although it may be just one person here and one person there, the difference that they make makes a huge difference.
Well, you doesn't mean this is where you are right now. It doesn't mean the thousands aren't coming. So the idea, what is it that's in you that wanted to make a difference, is the part of you that's truest. It is committed to serve the purpose of the unfolding of the opportunity of mankind in this particular way. And as she's doing it through Sachi's teachings, or she's doing it in her own way, or a way to be discovered yet, it will always be a more and more full expression of your purpose for being here, Sharon. And I'm very clear about that from the very beginning. And whatever's left in you will be met and shed in this process, so that you can do what in your heart of hearts knows it's here for.
Thank you. Thank you. Just one more little piece.
All right, just a little.
One more little piece that is so important. And this person has lived as she has lived for decades and has her own perception. And there are times, because I asked you to be my teacher, my guru, that you give me advice. You tell me yay or nay. And that has been so, so, so important, because I would have been in the relationship that would have taken me down the rabbit hole really deep, or moved or something. And so that's the other aspect of why I really wanted to share, is that, you know, when you have someone that can see beyond what we see in any particular moment, it makes such a difference. And I just so deeply appreciate that. So thank you. Thank you.
All right, I want to take a little commercial break before we end. Eric, will you give me a copy of the Bhagavad Gita book that I wrote? No, that one, the new one. A new one. Okay, so I'm bringing this forward because I want to empower its ability to get out into the world. Because I know that the Bhagavad Gita is so inaccessible to most people. in just the direct translation, and that this is an experiential revelation, and it was one of the great blessings that has been able to come to me in this work so far. And I understand, have over 400 people who have bought copies. Over 400 copies have been sold. So I'm asking those who have bought this to do a review on Amazon, to share something of, can't be too many words. You don't want to make it and you can ask our staff person, Amy, who manages the publication, for help, so that people can get a sense from your perspective of what the Gita, this particular book, and has been for you, to empower its ability to continue to expand out into the world. There's no real money in this at all. It's really the message to get it out in the world, to recognize it as an opportunity, because I do know that the nature of what's being revealed is consistent with this time, this era, and this condition we find ourselves in, so that the opportunity of knowing this can come into your lives. So in this way, those of you who are already linked with me opens up the door for more in the world to be able to have access to this. Okay, that's my commercial break. Yeah, and you get a $4 credit on Amazon. See, if you write a review. Okay, I think that's enough for tonight. We covered a lot of territory, and I'd like to just spend the rest of the time in a silent sitting. And we will see you all Tuesday, where we will have another satsang, one more. And then we're once again Rolling Stones.
So the 9-day starts on the 9th. And if you haven't already gotten the notice, the first evening is free. And Tom, where do they get that information? It's gone out through the mailing list, and it's on the website. Or I'll have Christina put it on the front page. Thank you, Tom. This is a lot of work.
All right. So let us meditate. Where's my phone? Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hari Om Tat Sat Shri. All glory to Buddha. Namaste and good night.